In this fourth video, we're going to talk about collecting data, which is the fourth step of the evaluation cycle, do. In the workshop, we do an activity at this point using grapes. Can you explain what this shows?
Okay, let's see if this can work without being able to taste the grapes. It feels a bit like a mindfulness exercise, actually. So to start with, we ask you to put a fresh grape in your mouth and really experience it, how it feels, what shape it is, and then slowly bite into it and release the juices. What does it taste like? Is it sweet or sharp? Is the skin juicy or chewy? And we ask you to write down all the words that come to mind as you're eating the grape. Anything goes.
Okay, that sounds easy and fun. So what sort of words do people tend to use?
It throws up quite a range of words, actually. Things like refreshing and bursting, and for one person, tasteless and unmemorable, which was surprising.
So what happens next in this activity?
Well, we then ask the next person to taste the grape in just the same way. Only this time, they only rate the grape using a number from 1 to 5, with 1 indicating dislike and 5 indicating a strong liking.
So what does this grape tasting show?
Well, it shows the different sort of data you get when you approach the question from a qualitative perspective compared to a quantitative one. If you ask people for their experiences in their own words, you get a whole range of different words, things you might not have thought of, reflecting the individual nature of the experience. And sometimes that's really important in an evaluation. If we ask people to rate something with a number, we can summarise all the numbers which we get, and that can be useful. But we can't say anything in depth about what the numbers mean, such as why they gave a certain number. And sometimes we need to know why in order to do something about it.
So the activity is a simple way to reflect on when and why you might choose one approach to data collection over another. Lots of people understand the differences between the two approaches, but may have a bias towards one over the other, or simply not have stopped to think about the right way to collect data.
Yes, absolutely. So taking time to choose the right type of data to collect can make a big difference to an evaluation, and not making assumption about what's the right or perhaps easiest way to do it. Of course, you will need to discuss your decisions with your evaluation team as well, and possibly stakeholders too.
Yeah, that's good advice. So have you got any other top tips for data collection in evaluation?
Well, my top tip would be to only collect data that's useful. It may sound obvious, but it can be really easy to collect data just because it's there and then end up with lots of data that you don't use. And obviously that's unethical, but it also wastes a lot of your time.
So how can I make sure that I will use what I collect?
The best way is to start from your objectives, as we looked at in step 3, and for each one to work out what data you need to collect. And then check whether there's any data that's perhaps already collected for a routine purpose that you might be able to use. If you've written SMART objectives, then doing this for each one will help you address your aim.
So how about the example that we looked at before about prescribing, to show what you mean here?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we set the objective before of recording all the changes to prescribing that were made during a pharmacist's visit to the care home. So we would need to capture what the care home resident was already prescribed to give you a baseline, and what, if any, changes were made by the pharmacist. Because there was also an objective about measuring cost effectiveness, you would also want to record price of medication being stopped or started, but you could add that at a later date.
Okay, so that seems quite straightforward, but is it always? So what if you wanted to collect data on something like patient well-being? What approach would you take to that?
Yes, there are lots of things like that. Mental or physical well-being, quality of life, changes in health status that we want to measure in evaluation. Unfortunately, there are lots of existing scales and measures for doing so. And these not only save you time on knowing what to measure, but they're also validated, so we can trust the results they give.
But what if you can't find a scale that does what you want? Or you're not measuring something but finding out about people's opinions or perceptions? What should you do then?
Designing your own data collection tools is definitely not easy. It takes time and a fair bit of expertise. You would need to make sure you involve the right people in deciding on the method, in formulating the questions you want to ask, and not just using your own ideas. And also it's essential that you pilot your questionnaire or your interviews. That is, test them out on a few people from your target audience to see if they work. This is an area where some further training is probably useful, and you might find an experienced colleague is willing to help.
So we've covered steps 1 to 4 of the evaluation cycle. You can find information about step 5, review and act, on the online evaluation toolkit.
Step 5 is what you do next with your findings and taking those forward. And there are resources for this stage in the online toolkit.